Okay, I'm going to talk you through the document that you've got. So the first investigation, we have to talk all about the research that Stuart has done. I'll talk you through the control assessment document in a moment, but I'll just go through this checklist to start off with. So a lot of this you will have already done, but we need to make sure that you talk about what primary research is and why it's useful, and what secondary research is and why it's useful. Now, when we talk about why it's useful, we have to relate it to Stuart. So why is it useful to Stuart? So why is primary research useful to him? Why is it negative to him? Why is it not useful to him? So for instance, one of the things you've got to remember, he's only young and he's starting up his own business. So he doesn't have a great deal of experience. So perhaps primary research will be good because they'll be giving him exactly what he needs. But secondary research could be good because it might be cheaper and he doesn't have a great deal of money to spend on his research. Then you need to talk about what is good about the research that has been done and why. So if you look at the document that's on FROG, the control assessment document, it says that he's only asked 100 people. He asked them during the day and he asked them only on a Tuesday. So that's only going to tell you about a certain type of person, someone who isn't working during the day, someone who isn't at school during the day. So perhaps he should have asked people on a weekend as well, he should have asked at a different time, and he certainly should have asked more than 100 people. So start off with what primary research is, what secondary research is, then what's good about what he's done, so what's good about the sample that he chose, the size of the sample and when he did it, but what's bad about the size of the sample and when he did it. Then overall tell me whether the research that he's done is good or whether it is bad. Then look at the questionnaire. There's something wrong with each of the questions and each of the questionnaires that he's done. So one for the school and one for individuals. So for instance, he asks about the number, the price that people would pay, but he doesn't give an example. So he says, is price important when you are choosing whether you will go paintballing? But then he doesn't ask how much people would pay. In the second questionnaire, he asks, have you been paintballing before? But if you think about it, that doesn't really impact whether people are going to go paintballing again, whether they've been before or not. So there's something wrong with each of these questions, so you can advise what's right with them and what's wrong with them. And then to end investigation 1, you need to say what else he could have done. So for instance, he could have done a focus group. He could have done some more secondary research. What could that have told him? So all of this investigation 1, any additional information that you are adding to your control assessment, please put at the end of investigation 1 so I can find it easily, so I can know exactly what it is that you've added in. Don't add it in to where you've already got things, add it at the end of investigation 1. Now, investigation 2 looks at pricing. So I've given you a couple of examples of screenshots from these websites. So the screenshots are below where the website was. So for instance, this one here is from Massive Attack Paintball. This one here is from paintball.co.uk. Top Gun Paintball, this is what these are from. This next one's from Battlezone Paintball. And the next one's from the Northeast Outdoor Centre. Also, if you put in paintballing into Google Maps, hit enter and zoom in on where we are, if you think that's round about where we are, these are all those paintballing sites on a map. You'll see why that is useful in a second. So if you remember what I've just said, we need to look at pricing. So there are 7 different pricing strategies you need to get in. I know some people have got more than these in, but at very least you need these 7 here. They'll be in your controlled assessment book, or if you're desperate, there's a couple of textbooks. So we need to include each of these. What are the advantages of them to Stuart, remember? And what are the disadvantages of them to Stuart? You've got to relate them to Stuart. Then we need to do some research, some primary research to work out how much people are willing to pay. So you need to think of at least 5 questions. I've given you 3 questions here as an example. So for instance, in those screenshots that I've given you above, you could look at the Top Gun Paintballing and say that they charge, say, £4.50. So instead of XXX, you could put £4.50 for entry and some paintballs. And then ask, is this a fair price? Hopefully you'll be able to then, from your results, say people think this is a fair price, therefore Stuart should charge it. So you're going to use that research to inform your controlled assessment. Then the next question could be, would you be interested in a promotion on paintballs or free places? Would it put you off if adults paid more than children? So that would relate to differential pricing. This one obviously would relate to promotional pricing. Something for psychological pricing, so it could be something along the lines of, would you rather pay £9.99 than £10? So there's 4 examples. Try and come up with one of your own. Once you've done that, you need to ask 100 people. The best way to do that is when you introduce this section here, just say you're going to ask 5 questions in order to gather some research that Stuart could find useful. Underneath that, just literally write the questions and say 46 people said yes, 54 people said no. So for each of the questions, give results out of 100 of who said yes, who said no. Then once we've done that, we need to make, as you can see, a graph for each of these results. Once you've made the graph, you need to say what the graph tells Stuart about what he should be doing. So if 100% of people say that they wouldn't pay £4.50 for entry, then he can't charge £4.50. He needs to charge less. If 75% of people said they'd rather pay £9.99 rather than £10, then he should be using psychological pricing. If 60% of people said that they would be unhappy if children paid less than adults, then possibly children shouldn't be paying less than adults. We need to tell Stuart what he should and shouldn't be doing based on this research. What pricing should he use in the short term? So remember, he's a new business. There's lots of other competitors. For instance, should he be using penetration pricing or promotional pricing in the short term? Then what should he be doing in the long term to keep it fresh? Should he also be using promotional pricing? Should he be using prices that are just based on his competitors, so competition pricing? And then if you really want to take it a step further, because remember all of this has got to be related to our local area, if you look at these statistics from the government, the average wage in the northeast is the lowest one in the country. So what might that tell us about how Stuart should be pricing his products? Should they be expensive or should they be cheap? And finally then, investigation 3. So this one starts off with looking at what a test market is. So you've got to try and explain, the knowledge in this one is explaining what a test market is. So remember, that's launching on a small scale before you launch to the whole market, and why it could be useful to Stuart. But remember, if he's test marketing a paintballing site, he would have to set up that paintballing site. So there's also negatives to test marketing in this situation as well. Then you need to talk about what a product mix is and how it could be useful to Stuart. So you can go back and look at all those different screenshots I took of the other paintballing sites. What did they sell in addition to paintballing? So on a basic level, they sell paintballs as well, but they'll also sell food, they'll sell drink. They might sell waterproofs, because in the northeast of England it rains a lot. Remember, we're trying to focus on our specific area and what Stuart could do in our area. So it's not that we're just setting up any old paintballing site, we're setting up a paintballing site in the northeast of England. So it might be cold, it might be wet, so we might sell outdoor clothing. In the case study, it mentions that they've got a large bit of land. So in addition to doing paintballing, like some of the other paintballing sites that I've screenshotted, should he be doing things like quad bike racing? There's a paintballing site near me that also has a golf course attached. Can he be doing things in addition to paintballing? So to follow on from that, you need to think of another little questionnaire, this time only 3 questions. What else could he be selling? So would you buy soup at a paintballing site? Well, probably not, because you'd have to either wait for it to cool down, which you don't really want to be doing, or you'd have to carry it around. So you're going to spill it when you go paintballing. Would you buy something like a bar of chocolate though? Yes, because you need that quickly. So ask what people would want to buy. Again, you need to ask 100 people, put those results below the questions, draw a graph for each of them. What do the graphs mean for Stuart? So use this research, so we're up to here now, use this research and the screenshots that I've given you to say what Stuart's product mix should be. So what should he sell and why? So should he sell food? Should he sell extra paintballs? Things like that. What shouldn't he sell and why? So again, for example, there's no use selling expensive hot soups as it will take too long to eat or you'll spill it running around. Remember, we're in the northeast of England. So is it appropriate that we sell, as I've said before, waterproofs or warm clothing? And then to finish it off, how might it change over time? So if you are really pushing yourself, you might want to relate this to product life cycle. So it might be that in the summer he sells different products to in the winter. When he's first starting off in the introduction stage of the product life cycle, he might sell different things to when he's in the growth stages or in the maturity stages. And finally, I've highlighted a couple of things in the actual control assessment tasks, which you can, which hopefully will be useful. So when you're going through all three of the investigations, it's interesting that he's 22-year-old. So market research could be useful to him because he might not have that much experience of real life and of business. He has some capital, so he doesn't have a lot of money. So that might suggest that, yes, he can spend a bit of money on market research, but he'd rather be spending it on actually setting up the business. So it's vital that he gets his market research right. That might mean he can't afford to spend too much on primary research. They do have a farm, so that we can assume that they have lots of land. So that's why we can say they could launch something like a golf course or quad bike racing as well. He's looking at developing packages, so promotional pricing might be something that you are going to suggest to Stuart because it's mentioned in the case study. He wants it to be inventive, so don't just go for the ordinary things. So it could be that you try to launch it with a golf club, and therefore you can have a whole day there playing golf in the morning and paintballing in the afternoon. Remember, he has no experience of running a business, so he does need good market research. He's picked out 4 different target markets, and that's why I've mentioned this here. So, for instance, if he's targeting school groups, why is he asking people on a high street on a Tuesday morning when those school groups will be at school? Are the people he's asking at the times he's asking appropriate? So I don't think that they are. Are questionnaires the right way to find this information out, or are there other ways? And then I've gone through each of the questions in the questionnaires, and there's something wrong with them. So a questionnaire for schools, in your school, you can only really speak for you. If you're asked in the school, you can't speak for the whole school, so it's making too much of a generalisation. Also, it asks depends on price, but it doesn't ask people to say how much they're willing to pay. Again, it says your school. Too general again, isn't it? It's not giving people the opportunity to say how often they would go. More than 50, too general again. 51 is more than 50, but so's 10 million. So we don't know. Would students on a trip buy their own lunch? Well, if they bring their own lunch, what could it be? Too vague again. Same with these questions here. Depends on price. How much is it? How much would they be willing to pay? Does it matter that they've ever been to a paintballing centre before? If yes, what did you like about it? If no, what would make you want to go? So it's not that there's anything wrong with this question as such, but there should be other questions following it. Why give people examples? Why not just ask why they would go? Or certainly have a box here that says other. And again, this is a little bit too prescriptive. Give them a chance to say how often they would go. So in summation, then, make sure that whenever you're given an answer in this controlled assessment, relate it back to Stuart. Relate it back to he's setting it up somewhere around Hebburn, which is in the northeast of England. You've got to keep relating back to that.